This is an NBC Palm Springs special report. Coronavirus facts, not fear. Presented by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of Eastern Coachella Valley.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this NBC Palm Springs special report, Coronavirus Facts, Not Fear. We're dedicating this half hour each night to in-depth interviews with a range of experts and professionals. Now more than ever, it's vital we hear directly from local leaders as we sift through confusing and rapidly changing information. Our Gina Lamont caught up with Chris Clapinski. He's a local financial advisor. Here's a portion of their conversation.
All right, let's talk about this now. April saw the worst downturn in the U.S. economy since literally the Great Depression. And yet the stock market had a near record month, going up 4,000 points in 4 weeks. Can you please explain that to me?
Well, I really can't explain it other than the fact that, you have to remember that the markets are forward-looking. So March was a terrible month in the market, and that was all due to the COVID pandemic and the market not knowing what was going to happen. And so once April hit and the stimulus package got approved, the market had some direction of what was going to happen. You have to remember that the stimulus package equated to 10% of GDP, which was the 2 months of the PPP in which they put in place. So we're still waiting for that to hit the system and hit the market, but that's what I would attribute it to.
All right, just for people that aren't invested in the stock market other than maybe 401k, why do we look to the Dow Jones Industrials as some sort of indicator on how our economy is doing when it can be in such opposite reaction to what's happening around the country?
Well, I think it's just a basic indicator for people to look at to get a semblance of what is going on. Are we in a good position or are we in a bad position? So I think that's what really drives it at this point. It's, we live in this world today where people want instant gratification, and that's one way to get instant gratification.
Okay, but if we were to look at it, you'd say 24,000, it's up 4,000 in the past month. We're in a good place. Yeah, we've got negative GDP, 40 million new unemployed Americans. How is the stock market still going up?
Well, again, we have all these dollars that have been put in place that haven't been spent yet, and people are holding on to it. So when we look at some of the numbers, the April housing rental mortgage payments were severely depressed. They've come back in April. That's due to the stimulus. One of the things that I'm looking at with regards to what is going to transpire going forward is, now that states are reopening, what are the unemployment numbers going to look like? So that, to me, is one thing that the average person can look at and say, we know that people got laid off and furloughed because of COVID. Now that the states are open, are employers going to actually bring these people back to work?
Well, you mentioned the state reopening. In fact, it was just a short time ago that they announced the second part of phase 2, which is now allowing restaurants to have in-restaurant dining, and salons have been allowed to reopen as well. So as you start to see more things reopening, are you going to be looking to see how quickly they come back to decide on where you're going to spend your money in the future?
Well, I think the number one factor right now is confidence, Gino. How does the American public feel about going into public spaces? Remember, it's the elderly that are really affected by the virus, plus those with underlying health conditions. So if you're in that group, which is a large portion of the U.S. population, it's going to be, I think, a slow grind up. That's why I think you will see another round of stimulus in some form or fashion.
If you were to advise somebody as far as where to invest their money in what sectors, is there any sector looking good? I mean, even commodities are down right now, and those are normally fairly safe areas. Where would you suggest people put their money as far as what sectors?
Well, I think the biggest sectors right now are tech and healthcare. We know this year that the NASDAQ is in positive territory for the year. So, and you say, why? Well, everyone's sheltered in place, having to stream services online, shop online. So we know tech is in positive territory this year. We know that everyone has anticipated the numbers for second quarter GDP to be abysmal. So that's another reason why the market sold off and is now kind of stabilized a little bit. That's where I would suggest people look to invest if they're looking to get into the market today.
How concerned are you as a market guy? We knew brick and mortar stores were in trouble, but this was like a push off the cliff for most of them. When you start to see 100-year-old stores just shutting down and saying, we're not coming back, how concerned does that make you?
It is concerning to a certain extent, but remember, because of technology and forward-looking things, people have to understand that businesses are just like everybody else, and if they're not willing to adapt and adjust to the environment that they're in, they will unfortunately die.
So Sears are basically this century's horse and buggy makers?
Yes, I would very well put it. That's a very well analogy in terms of what Sears and even JCPenney's.
Right, a lot of them, names that we grew up with, in trouble now. As you look at a society that's more and more ordering things online, maybe a little trepidatious about going back into restaurants or back into casinos, certainly sporting events, what advice would you have for the consumer going forward with how to take care of their money and put it in the best place possible?
Well, I think just like we always say, you want to keep 3 to 6 months of emergency funds on hand if you can. You want to be practical in what you're buying. And I think realistically what this shows us is we don't need all of those things that we have in the house. And so we have to be a little bit more prudent in what we buy and how we buy it.
Yeah, I got 3 to 6 hours of savings, so I'm not quite there yet. Chris Clapinski, thank you, sir, for joining us, and thank you for your expertise.
Thank you, Gino. Appreciate it.